The millionaire's unexpected anchor. A family forged in new love. Hello to everyone joining us today. Before we dive into this incredible story, I ask for a small favor. Leave a comment below with the name of your city. I'm fascinated to know where you are following this journey from. And if you like the ending, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that will touch your soul. Part 1. A Glimmer in the Arrival Hall. The fluorescent lights of Heathrow Airport hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow as Marcus Vane pushed his luggage through the arrivals hall. His mind was still buzzing, processing the dizzying success of his recent project in Dubai. After 6 weeks of intense negotiations and sleepless nights, the Vane Design Group had secured the contract to design a massive sustainable housing complex, a deal worth an astonishing $15 million. At 32, he was living his dream, yet the victory felt empty somehow. His phone vibrated with congratulatory messages from colleagues and clients, but Marcus barely glanced at them. The exhaustion was deep, a heavy cloak he couldn't shed. All he really wanted was to get to his empty apartment in Mayfair, pour a whiskey, and try to forget why a monumental success felt so utterly meaningless, with no one to share it with. It was then that he saw her. Sophie Maxwell stood by a bustling newsstand, her auburn hair catching the harsh airport lighting like spun copper, gleaming with a vibrant, fiery life. She wore a simple, well-worn blue dress that gently hugged her familiar curves, and in her arms, she cradled something that made Marcus's world violently tilt on its axis. A baby, a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft pink blanket, with small fists innocently waving in the air. Marcus stopped dead, the handle of his luggage slipping from his suddenly numb fingers. 16 months. It had been precisely 16 months since their explosive breakup, since Sophie had walked out of his life with tears streaming down her face and words of hatred that still echoed in his darkest nightmares. The baby in her arms looked about 10 or 11 months old, with a sparse cap of dark hair and skin that seemed to glow with a radiant, healthy vitality. As if sensing his intense gaze, the little girl slowly turned her head, and Marcus felt his heart completely stop, then painfully wrench in his chest. Green eyes. Not just any green, but the rare, piercing emerald shade that had skipped 2 generations in his family before finally landing on his own face. The very eyes his beloved grandmother had possessed. Eyes that were so exceptionally unusual that strangers often commented on them. Eyes that were now staring back at him from Sophie's baby's face. "Sophie!" he called out, his voice cracking like a teenager's, raw with disbelief and a sudden, inexplicable hope. She turned sharply at the sound of her name, and the color visibly drained from her face when she saw him. For one long, suspended moment, neither moved. The baby happily cooed, utterly oblivious to the intense drama unfolding around her, playfully stretching her tiny fingers toward the ceiling lights, chasing the blurry, distant glow. "Marcus," Sophie breathed, instinctively pulling the baby closer to her chest, a fiercely protective gesture. "We need to go," she said quickly, her voice sharp with desperation, grabbing the baby bag slung over her shoulder. "Come on, Lily. Let's find Daddy, Lily." The baby's name was Lily. Marcus felt something deep break inside his chest as he watched Sophie try to maneuver past him, clearly desperate to escape. "Wait," he said, firmly stepping into her path, blocking her escape. "Please, just wait 1 minute." "There is nothing to discuss, Marcus." Sophie's voice was sharp, defensive, like a protective shield. "We are meeting someone." But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was studying the baby's face with the intense focus of an architect examining crucial blueprints, dissecting every feature. The nose was unmistakably Sophie's, small and slightly upturned, but the chin had the stubborn, determined set of the Vane family. The hands were long-fingered and elegant, just like her mother's. And those eyes, God, those eyes were like looking into a mirror. "How old is she?" he asked softly, his voice barely a whisper. "That is none of your business." Sophie's voice was clipped, final. "Sophie, please." Marcus took a careful step closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, pleading. "Those eyes. She has my family's eyes, my grandmother's eyes. That is—" Sophie's composure cracked for a moment, and Marcus saw a raw flash of fear in her face before the mask snapped back into place, harder than before. "Plenty of babies have green eyes, Marcus. It means nothing." "Not like these," he insisted, his voice unwavering. "You know it doesn't. These eyes are 1 in a million, and they run in my family. My grandmother had them, I have them, and now—" He gestured helplessly toward Lily, who was now staring at him with what seemed like pure curiosity, her small face tilted inquisitively. "Stop," Sophie said firmly, her voice tight. "Just stop. You made your choice 16 months ago when you told me a family would ruin everything you had worked for. You chose your career over us, remember? Well, congratulations, Marcus. You got exactly what you wanted." The words hit him like physical blows, each one a sharp, agonizing pang. "That is not what I said, and you know it. I said I wanted to wait until we were financially stable, until I could provide for a family properly. I never said I didn't want one. Your exact words were, 'A baby right now would destroy everything I have built,'" she cut in, her voice rising slightly before she controlled herself, looking around nervously, word of the curious onlookers. "And then you took that job in Dubai without even discussing it with me." Marcus ran a frustrated hand through his hair. "I took the job because it was supposed to secure our lives. The money from that project was going to buy us a house, give us security. I was doing it for us, Sophie." "You were doing it for you," she countered, her voice laced with bitter reproach. "Everything was always about your timeline, your plans, your dreams. Well, guess what? Life doesn't wait for your perfect moment." Lily chose that precise moment to let out a happy squeal, stretching her plump arms toward Marcus, as if recognizing something deeply familiar in him, drawn by some invisible, pure, innocent thread. Her innocent sound broke into their heated argument like a sunbeam piercing storm clouds, and both adults looked at her in surprised silence. "She likes you," Sophie said softly, almost to herself, a glimmer of something like wonder in her eyes. Marcus tentatively extended a finger, and Lily immediately grasped it with her tiny fist. The grip was surprisingly strong. The contact sent a jolt through his entire system, a powerful connection he had never felt before, yet somehow recognized on a deep cellular level. "Sophie," he said, his voice husky with overwhelming emotion. "She's mine." For one long, agonizing moment, Sophie just stared at him, and Marcus could see a silent, furious war going on behind her dark brown eyes. Finally, she gently extracted Lily's small hand from his finger. "It doesn't matter, Marcus," she said quietly. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Even if she is, what difference would it make? You made it clear you weren't ready for this kind of responsibility. That was then," Marcus protested, a desperate plea in his voice. "Now everything is different. The Dubai project, the company's success, we could have everything we dreamed of. Us." Anna laughed bitterly, a harsh, humorless sound. There is no us, Marcus. There hasn't been for over a year. You took care of that. Reader interaction. What do you think of Marcus's initial reaction? Was he truly oblivious or just blinded by ambition? Share your thoughts in the comments. Part 2. The Truth Revealed. Sophie Maxwell. A voice called her name from behind. There you are, honey. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible getting out of central London. Marcus whirled around to see a tall, silver-haired man approaching them with a warm smile. He looked about 60, with kind eyes and soft laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived. The man's gaze flickered curiously between Marcus and Sophie, clearly sensing the palpable tension in the air. "Dad," Sophie said with obvious relief in her voice, a sudden softening of her rigid posture. "This is Marcus Vane. Marcus, this is my father, Arthur Maxwell." Arthur's expression shifted subtly as he registered Marcus, a glimmer of recognition mixed with a deeper, wary emotion. This was the man who had broken his daughter's heart, who had left her to face pregnancy and childbirth alone, while he pursued monumental success across the globe. "Mr. Vane," Arthur said courteously, though his tone carried a distinct glacial chill beneath the politeness. "Mr. Maxwell," Marcus replied, extending his hand, trying to project a calmness he didn't feel. "It's a pleasure to meet you, sir." Arthur shook his hand briefly, his grip firm, before directing his full attention to his granddaughter. "And how is my beautiful Lily today?" he cooed, reaching out to take the baby. Lily happily went to him, babbling in that special language only babies truly understand. But even in her grandfather's loving arms, her remarkable green eyes kept returning to Marcus, as if drawn by some invisible magnetic thread. "We should go," Sophie said, gathering her things again with a renewed urgency in her voice. "Lily needs her afternoon nap." "Of course," Arthur agreed, but his eyes remained fixed on Marcus, a silent challenge deep in their depths. "Mr. Vane lives here?" The question carried significant weight, and Marcus instantly understood the underlying message. This man was fiercely protecting his daughter and granddaughter, and wanted to know if Marcus posed any further threat to their fragile peace. "I live here," Marcus replied simply, his voice steady. "London is my home." Arthur nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. Then he turned to Sophie. "The car's in the garage, honey. Why don't you go ahead with Lily? I'll catch up in a moment." Sophie looked like she wanted to protest, but something in her father's knowing gaze stopped her. She adjusted the baby bag over her shoulder and looked at Marcus one last time, a complex mix of sadness and resignation in her eyes. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "I hope you get everything you wanted from Dubai." As she walked away, Lily peeked over her mother's shoulder. Those distinctive green eyes locked onto Marcus until they disappeared completely around a corner. An unsettling and unforgettable image was seared into his mind. Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside him, a deep, irreversible realignment. It was as if the very axis of his world had suddenly, irrevocably realigned around that tiny, perfect face. "She's your daughter, isn't she?" Arthur said quietly, once they were truly alone, his voice devoid of judgment. Just a simple statement of fact. Marcus whirled toward the older man, startled by the sheer bluntness of the question, caught off guard. I think so." "She is," Arthur replied, nodding. "Those eyes are unmistakable in my family." His expression softened slightly, a touch of deep, shared understanding. "I figured as much. Lily Rose Maxwell Vane." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow, a sudden, unexpected impact. "Vane?" he asked, his voice husky. "She carried your surname, Lily Rose Maxwell Vane. Sophie told everyone it was just Maxwell, but legally that child is Lily Rose Maxwell Vane. Arthur paused, studying Marcus's face intensely, looking for something. The question is, Mr. Vane, what are you going to do about it? Marcus stared in the direction Sophie had disappeared, his mind racing, a kaleidoscope of possibilities and crushing regrets swirling through his thoughts. I don't know, he admitted. His voice was raw with a sudden vulnerability. I don't even know where to begin. I might suggest you start with the truth, Arthur said softly, his voice kind but firm. About what you truly want, about what you are willing to sacrifice for it, and about whether you are finally ready to put someone else's needs before your own ambition. With that, Arthur Maxwell turned and walked away, leaving Marcus completely alone in the middle of Heathrow Airport. The immense weight of newly discovered fatherhood settled upon his shoulders like a heavy, unexpected cloak. He wasn't sure he was ready to wear. As he finally gathered his dropped luggage and headed toward the exit, Marcus Vane had made a decision that would change everything. He was going to fight for his daughter, and if it was still possible, for the woman he had never truly stopped loving. The only question now was whether 16 months of bitter grief and devastating misunderstandings could be overcome, or if it was already too late. What do you think of Arthur's revelation, and is Marcus truly ready to fight for a family he once pushed away? Share your thoughts below. Part 3. Seeking Absolution. Marcus sat in his sleek Mayfair penthouse, staring at his phone for the 100th time that night. 3 days had passed since the airport encounter, and Lily's face, those unmistakable green eyes, haunted his every waking moment, shattering his carefully constructed world of success and solitude. His finger hovered over Sophie's contact information, which he had never had the heart to delete. Every time he started to dial, he imagined her hanging up the moment she heard his voice, a silent, painful rejection. The conversation with Arthur Maxwell replayed in his mind. Lily Rose Maxwell Vane. His daughter carried his surname, even if the world didn't know it. The doorbell interrupted his melancholy. Carlos Soto, his best friend since university, and now a successful family lawyer, stood in the hall holding a bottle of whiskey and wearing a look of deep concern. You look terrible, mate, Carlos observed, nudging past Marcus into the minimalist living room. Someone was born, Marcus replied grimly, accepting the glass Carlos poured him. A person I didn't know existed. Carlos settled into the leather armchair opposite him. Tell me everything. So Marcus did. He recounted every excruciating detail of the airport encounter, every sharp word exchanged, every overwhelming moment of recognition when he looked into Lily's eyes. Are you sure she's yours? Carlos asked gently when Marcus finished. Those eyes don't lie. They are a genetic marker in my family dating back generations. My great-grandmother had them. My grandmother, Amelia, had them. I have them, and now Lily does too. Marcus ran a frustrated hand through his hair. The timing fits perfectly. Sophie and I broke up 16 months ago, and Lily looks about 10 months old. Have you tried contacting Sophie directly? I've drafted a dozen messages and deleted every one. She made it clear at the airport she wants nothing to do with me. Marcus stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the London skyline. Carlos, what are my legal rights here? If Lily is your biological daughter, you have the right to petition for a paternity test and seek custody arrangements. But Marcus, Carlos's voice held a warning. Family court battles are brutal, especially when there's this much bad blood between the parents. It would be much better to resolve this amicably. How can I resolve anything when she won't even talk to me? Carlos was quiet for a moment, swirling the whiskey in his glass, contemplating. There might be another way. Sophie has a sister. Grace Maxwell, Marcus corrected. That nurse at St. Thomas's Hospital. She and Sophie were always close. He paused, hope flickering in his chest. Do you think she would talk to me? It's worth a shot. Sometimes a neutral family member can bridge gaps that seem impossible to cross. Part 4. Facing the past, building the future. The next morning, Marcus found himself in the bustling cafe of St. Thomas Hospital, nursing a terrible cup of coffee and nervously waiting for Grace's shift to end. When she finally appeared, still in her blue scrubs, her expression shifted from surprise to wary caution. "Marcus Vane," she said, sliding into the seat opposite him, her voice cold. "I wondered when you'd show up." "Grace, I need to know the truth about Lily." "What truth would that be?" Grace studied his face for a long moment, her eyes piercing. "She's my daughter. It matters. You weren't there when Sophie needed you most." The words hurt, a painful reminder. "I was in Dubai closing the biggest deal of my career. I had no idea Sophie was pregnant." "Because you never gave her a chance to tell you," Grace countered, her voice sharper now. "The night you two broke up, she was planning to give you the news. She had found out that very afternoon. But before she could say anything, you launched into that self-centered speech about how a family would destroy your carefully laid plans." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face, a cold dread sweeping over him. She was going to tell me that night? She had the pregnancy test in her purse. Marcus was terrified but thrilled, ready to work it out together. Then you made it clear a baby was the last thing you wanted. So when you took the job in Dubai 2 weeks later, without even discussing it with her, she made a decision. She would handle the pregnancy alone rather than trap you in a life you clearly didn't want. Marcus covered his face with his hands, a guttural groan escaping his lips. God, what have I done? Grace's expression softened slightly, a hint of empathy in her eyes. You were both young and scared. Sophie was terrified of being a burden, and you were so singularly focused on success you couldn't see what was right in front of you. "Tell me about Lily," Marcus pleaded. His voice was husky with raw emotion. "Tell me about my daughter." Grace hesitated. Then she seemed to make a decision. Her gaze softened further. She was born on May 20th at 3:42 a.m. She weighed 8 pounds 2 ounces. Sophie was in labor for 18 hours, and she was alone, except for Dad and me. You were in Dubai celebrating your contract signing at some fancy restaurant, if I recall from the photos. The timeline hit Marcus like a physical blow, a devastating impact to the gut. While he toasted his professional success, Sophie brought his daughter into the world without him, suffering alone. "Lily is remarkable," Grace continued, her voice warming with pride. "She's ahead on all her milestones. She has Sophie's fierce determination and an insatiable curiosity." "But Marcus," Grace paused, meeting his eyes directly, a meaningful look. "She has your family's intelligence. What's her full name?" Marcus asked quietly, almost afraid to hear the answer. "Lily Rose Maxwell Vane," confirmed Grace. Sophie insisted on the Vane surname, even though she told everyone it was just Maxwell. She said Lily deserved to know where she came from, even if her father chose his career over his family. "I never chose my career over family," Marcus said desperately, a burning ache in his chest. "I was trying to build something stable. Everything I did was supposed to be for our future together. Then why didn't you fight for her when she left?" The question hung in the air like a heavy, undeniable accusation, a truth he couldn't escape. Marcus had asked himself the same question countless times over the past 16 months. Pride, he finally admitted, the word a bitter taste on his tongue. Stupid, destructive pride. I thought if she could walk away so easily, then maybe we weren't meant to be. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that didn't hurt. Grace leaned back in her chair, studying him with a thoughtful expression. Sophie believes you've forgotten all about her. She sees your success in the papers, your projects, your awards. She thinks you got exactly what you wanted, a life free of the complications of family. I'd give it all up, Marcus said, without hesitation. The words burst forth from a place of deep conviction. Every contract, every award, every euro in the bank, I'd give it all up for a chance to hold my daughter, to be the father she deserves. Do you mean that? Grace asked, her voice skeptical, testing him. Because being a father isn't about grand gestures, Marcus. It's about 3 a.m. feedings and nappy changes and putting someone else's needs before your own every day, without fail. Yes, Marcus said firmly, his gaze unwavering. I want all of it. The sleepless nights, the worry, the responsibility. I want to be her father, not just biologically, but in every way that matters. Grace was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. Sophie won't talk to you directly, but she might listen if the message comes through me. What should I say? Start with the truth. Tell her what you just told me. All of it. Do you think Anna will read the message? And what kind of challenges do you foresee if Marcus tries to become a father now? Share your thoughts below. Part 5. A Father's Plea. That evening, Marcus found himself in his spacious home office, staring at a blank email draft, the cursor mockingly blinking. How do you begin to apologize for missing the birth of your own child? How do you explain that every professional success, every triumphant deal felt utterly empty without the people you loved to share it with? Finally, with a heavy sigh, he began to type. The words flowed from his heart, raw and unfiltered. Sophie, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I can't stop thinking about Lily. Grace told me about the night we broke up, about how you planned to tell me about the pregnancy. I need you to know that I never, ever would have walked away if I had known. When I said I wanted to wait for the right time to start a family, I wasn't rejecting the idea. I was trying to be responsible. I grew up watching my father work himself to death trying to provide for us, and I swore I would do better. I wanted to give you and our children everything, including a father who wouldn't have to miss bedtime stories because he was working late to make ends meet. I was wrong. There is no perfect time or ideal circumstance. There is only love and commitment and the willingness to figure it out together. I should have trusted us enough to believe we could handle anything, as long as we faced it as a team. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't expect you to welcome me back into your life. But Lily is my daughter too, and she deserves to know her father. Not the successful businessman in the papers, but the man who would give up everything for a chance to read her bedtime stories and teach her to ride a bike. Please, Sophie, give me a chance to prove that I am ready to be the father Lily needs and the partner you deserved all along. With all my love, Marcus. He sent the email to Grace with a simple message. Please give this to her when you think she's ready to read it. 2 days later, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but the voice was painfully familiar, soft, uncertain. Marcus, it's Sophie. He breathed. His voice was filled with overwhelming relief. Thank you for calling. Grace gave me your message. She also told me what you said about giving up everything for Lily. I meant every word. There was a long, tense pause. Lily has been asking for you. Marcus's heart stopped, then pounded with a sudden, fierce hope. Asking for me? She's too young to talk, but since the airport, she's been looking for you. She stares at the door as if she's expecting someone. Grace thinks she recognized something familiar in you. Can I see her? Marcus asked, barely daring to hope. His voice was a mere whisper. Sophie's voice cracked, a flash of vulnerability. I'm scared, Marcus. What if you decide this isn't what you want? What if you realize fatherhood is harder than you thought? I am not going to disappear, Marcus promised, his voice firm, unwavering. I will prove it to you every day for the rest of my life if I have to. Another long pause, filled with unexpressed anxieties. There's a park near my flat, El Retiro Park. Lily and I go there most afternoons, around 4 o'clock. I'll be there, Marcus said immediately, a rush of adrenaline. Marcus, Sophie said quietly, her voice tinged with a painful finality. This does not fix anything between us. Too much has happened for that. But Lily deserves to know her father. I understand, Marcus replied, though his heart broke at the absolute finality in her voice. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. After hanging up, Marcus sat in his office looking out at the London skyline. Tomorrow, he would see his daughter again. Tomorrow, he would begin the long journey to earn a place in her life. For the first time in 16 months, Marcus Thorne felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Part 6. First steps on a new path. Marcus arrived at El Retiro Park 30 minutes early, his palms sweating, as he sat on a bench overlooking the serene lake. He had barely slept the night before, his mind racing with possibilities and fears. What if Lily didn't remember him? What if Sophie changed her mind? What if he proved to be the disaster of a father he had always feared becoming? At exactly 4 o'clock, he saw them. Sophie was pushing a navy blue stroller down the winding path, her auburn hair catching the late afternoon sun, glowing with a soft, warm radiance. She wore jeans and a simple white sweater, looking younger and more relaxed than she had at the airport. As she drew closer to his bench, Marcus could see Lily sitting up in her stroller, alert and curious about her surroundings. Hello, Marcus, Sophie said softly as she approached his bench. Thank you for coming. Hello, Sophie, he replied, standing awkwardly, feeling a surge of nervous energy. You look wonderful. Sophie's cheeks flushed slightly at the compliment. Lily was excited about her outing today. I think she somehow knew it was special. Marcus looked at his daughter, and his breath caught in his throat. Lily was even more beautiful than he remembered, with plump, rosy cheeks and dark hair that softly curled at the ends. She wore a pink dress with tiny flowers and matching shoes that looked barely worn. But it was her eyes that captivated him completely, those distinctive green eyes that marked her unmistakably as his. Hello, Lily, he said quietly, crouching down to her level, his voice filled with a tenderness he didn't know he possessed. Lily studied him intensely for a long moment, those remarkable eyes focused completely on his face, observing every detail. Then, to the profound astonishment of both parents, she reached out her plump arms toward him and made a sound that was an unmistakable, happy sign of recognition. She remembers you, Sophie whispered with genuine surprise and a hint of wonder in her voice. May I? Marcus asked, tentatively gesturing toward Lily, his heart pounding. Sophie hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Be careful with her head. With trembling hands, Marcus gently lifted his daughter from her stroller. Lily settled into his arms as if she belonged there, one tiny fist gripping his shirt, while the other explored his face with the concentrated intensity of a miniature scientist. When her small fingers touched his cheek, Marcus felt something fundamental shift within him. A fierce, protective love, unlike anything he had ever experienced. An anchor dropped deep within his soul. "She's perfect," he breathed. His voice was husky with overwhelming emotion. "She is," Sophie agreed, a soft smile gracing her lips, and for a moment, the tension that had lingered between them faded, replaced by a shared warmth. As they both watched Lily happily babble in her father's arms, completely content, they spent the next hour walking around the peaceful lake. Lily content to observe the world from Marcus's arms, while her parents tentatively began to rebuild the fragile bridges that had burned 16 months ago. Marcus asked endless questions about Lily's routine, her favorite foods, her sleep patterns, her toys, absorbing every detail. Sophie found herself sharing stories she had kept hidden, intimate moments only she had witnessed, Lily's first radiant smile, the way she laughed when tickled, how she loved splashing in the bath, recounting it all with growing ease. "She's incredibly advanced," Marcus observed, as Lily demonstrated her ability to clap and wave goodbye to passing ducks. "A natural, joyful artist. The pediatrician says she's in the 95th percentile for cognitive development," Sophie said with obvious pride. "She's already trying to pull herself up to stand and can say mama and baby." "And Dada?" Marcus asked, a hopeful, vulnerable note in his voice. Sophie's expression tightened slightly. "She doesn't say that. I haven't taught her that word." The sharp reminder of his absence hit Marcus like a physical blow, a fresh wound, but he pushed through the pain. "I understand. I have a lot to make up for." Over the next 6 weeks, Marcus began to restructure his entire life around newfound fatherhood. He turned down lucrative international projects, delegated travel to his partners, and meticulously blocked his calendar every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday afternoon for what he privately called Lily time. Their meetings always took place in neutral public settings, busy parks, playgrounds filled with children's laughter, family-friendly cafes. Sophie was always present, a silent observer at first. Then, slowly, a cautious participant. Marcus brought age-appropriate gifts, soft, colorful books, stacking toys that challenged her growing mind, a musical teddy bear that quickly became Lily's absolute favorite. He learned to change nappies with the same precision he once reserved for complex, architectural blueprints. He mastered the subtle art of warming bottles to the perfect temperature and discovered, to his utter amazement, that making Lily laugh was more profoundly satisfying than any professional accomplishment he had ever achieved. "You're good with her," Sophie admitted one afternoon as they watched Lily crawl around a brightly colored playmat Marcus had brought to the park. "Better than I expected. She makes it easy," Marcus replied, quickly moving to redirect Lily when she headed toward a large mud puddle, a quick protective instinct. "She's so smart, so curious about everything. I could watch her explore for hours." "You sound like a proud father," Sophie said, and there was something wistful, almost longing, in her voice. "I am a proud father," Marcus said firmly, meeting her gaze, "though I'm still learning how to be a good one." Their routine continued for 6 weeks, a steady rhythm that slowly built trust. Marcus demonstrated his unwavering commitment through his unbreakable presence and reliability. And Sophie, slowly, cautiously, began to trust that he wouldn't disappear again. Lily, sensing the growing harmony, thrived on the increased attention, reaching new developmental milestones almost weekly. Her joy was contagious. "What do you think of Marcus's transformation? Has he truly changed, or is he just trying to win Sophie back?" Share your theories in the comments. Part 7. A Father's Vigil. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday afternoon in November. Marcus was in his sleek home office reviewing plans for a new eco-housing development when his phone rang. Sophie's name on the caller ID made him smile. She had started calling him directly instead of going through Grace, a small but profoundly significant step forward in their cautious reconciliation. "Sophie, is everything okay?" His voice was alert. "Marcus." Her voice was tight with pure panic, hoarse with fear. "I'm at the hospital. Lily can't breathe properly. She has pneumonia, and they're talking about putting her on oxygen. I need you here." Marcus shot out of his chair before she finished speaking. Adrenaline surging through his body. "What hospital? Niño Jesus Children's Hospital? I'm on my way. Don't hang up." The drive to the hospital was the longest 15 minutes of Marcus's life. Sophie stayed on the phone, her voice trembling uncontrollably as she desperately described Lily's labored breathing and the doctor's somber, worried expressions. By the time Marcus burst through the doors of the pediatric ward, his expensive shirt soaked from running through the relentless rain, Sophie was a barely controlled mess. Her composure had shattered. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice raw with fear. "Room 7, Sophie said, pointing down the hall, her hand shaking uncontrollably. "They're running tests." Marcus found his daughter in a hospital crib, looking impossibly small and frail, with an oxygen mask covering half her tiny face. Wires monitored her vital signs, flickering ominously, and the chilling sound of her breathing, rattling and strained, filled the sterile, silent room. Sophie stood rigidly beside the crib. Tears ran relentlessly down her face, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Without thinking, Marcus pulled Sophie into his arms. She resisted for only a moment, a brief, fragile hesitation before completely collapsing against his chest. Her carefully maintained composure finally, utterly broken under the immense pressure. "I should have brought her sooner," she sobbed, her voice muffled against his shirt. "I thought it was just a cold. I should have known." "Hey," Marcus said firmly, holding her tighter, his voice a steady anchor in her storm. "You are an amazing mother. This is not your fault. Not at all. Not at all." Dr. Patricia Lopez, the attending pediatrician, entered the room holding Lily's chart. "Are both of you the parents?" she asked, her gaze calmly assessing them. "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation, his voice unwavering. And Sophie, surprisingly, did not correct him, simply leaning into his embrace. "Lily has pneumonia in her left lung, but we caught it in time. With antibiotics and oxygen therapy, she should make a full recovery. However, we'd like to keep her for observation for at least 72 hours. Whatever she needs," Marcus said immediately, his voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Cost is not a factor. For the next 3 days, Marcus and Sophie took turns maintaining a tireless vigil by Lily's bedside. Marcus had Carlos handle all his urgent business matters, delegating everything, while he focused entirely on his daughter's precarious recovery, consumed by her well-being. He slept in an uncomfortable hospital chair, survived on coffee from the cafeteria and sandwiches from the vending machine, and meticulously learned to read the monitors, tracking Lily's vital signs, his architect's mind now devoted to deciphering life. On the second night, while Lily finally slept peacefully, her breathing slowly returning to a normal, steady rhythm, Sophie found herself looking at Marcus truly for the first time since their devastating breakup, seeing him with new eyes. The expensive suits had been replaced by wrinkled jeans and a rumpled shirt. His hair, usually perfectly slicked back, was messy from constantly running his hands through it in worry. and he had deep, dark circles under his eyes from the relentless lack of sleep. But there was something profoundly different about him, a new softness, a raw vulnerability she had never seen before, a purity of concern. "You didn't have to stay," she said quietly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, I did," Marcus replied, without taking his eyes off Lily, his gaze filled with a fierce tenderness. "She's my daughter. This is where I belong with her." The Marcus I knew would have hired a private nurse and gone straight back to work, delegating this inconvenient problem. Marcus finally looked at her, and Sophie was shocked by the raw intensity, the burning conviction in his emerald green eyes. The Marcus you knew was an idiot who thought success was measured in contracts and profits. This Marcus knows that the only success that truly matters is being the father Lily deserves and the partner you should have had by your side all along. Slowly, irrevocably, Anna felt her carefully constructed walls, built so painstakingly over 16 painful months, beginning to crumble. "Marcus," her voice was hoarse with emotion, trembling. "I love you," he said simply, the words a heartfelt confession. "I never stopped loving you. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. But losing Lily would completely destroy me. I know I don't deserve another chance with you, but please, please, don't shut me out of her life." Before Anna could answer, a small, tiny voice from the hospital crib caught both their attention, breaking the spell. "Daddy," Lily said clearly, her small green eyes focused directly on Marcus, despite the cumbersome oxygen mask covering half her face. "Daddy!" Marcus felt his heart stop completely, a sudden, overwhelming rush of emotion. "She just said that," he whispered, barely audible. "Daddy," Lily repeated, reaching out her tiny hand toward him, a clear invitation. Marcus gently took her hand in his, and Lily's small fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength, an undeniable connection. "Hello, my precious girl," he said quietly, his voice breaking with overwhelming emotion. "Daddy's here. Daddy will always be here." Sophie watched this profoundly tender moment unfold between her daughter and the man she had never truly stopped loving, and felt the last stubborn remnants of her defenses collapse completely. Lily had made her decision. She wanted her father in her life, and if Sophie was honest with herself, deep down and truly honest, she wanted him there too. What do you think of Lily's first word? And how will this hospital visit change Marcus and Sophie's relationship from now on? Share your thoughts below. Part 8. A New Family. 6 months later, on Lily's first birthday, Marcus's elegant Mayfair penthouse was completely transformed with vibrant pink balloons, shimmering streamers, and enough gifts to stock a toy store. Sophie's family, Marcus's mother, who had flown from London, Carlos, Grace, and several close friends gathered, their faces lit with joy to celebrate the precious milestone. Lily, who was now walking with steady, though adorably wobbly steps and constantly babbling, was the radiant center of attention in her ruffled pink dress and tiny, glittering tiara. She had blossomed into a secure, happy little girl who clearly adored her father and lit up with pure delight every time he entered a room. "Speech!" Carlos called out good-naturedly as they prepared to cut the elaborate birthday cake, his voice echoing in the lively room. Marcus stood up, lifting Lily gently into his arms, and looked around the room at the radiant faces of the people who mattered most in his newly realigned world. "A year ago," he began, his voice clear, filled with deep sincerity, "I thought I had everything a man could ever want. Success, recognition, financial security. But I was wrong. I had nothing because I didn't have what truly matters. Family. He looked at Sophie, who was looking up at him, tears shining in her eyes, a soft, loving smile on her lips. Lily has taught me that being a father isn't about providing the perfect life or waiting for the right moment. It's about showing up every day and putting your child's needs before your own, without hesitation. It's about midnight feedings and nappy changes and reading the same worn storybook 50 times because it makes her laugh. Lily happily babbled, reaching out to playfully grab his tie, making everyone in the room chuckle with delight. But most importantly, Marcus continued, his gaze returning to Sophie, his voice husky with raw emotion. Lily has taught me that love isn't something you plan or schedule. It simply is. And it is worth fighting for, worth changing for. It is worth everything. He gently set Lily down on the table. Then he turned completely to Sophie, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The room fell silent, holding a collective breath as he knelt. His gaze fixed on her. "Sophie Maxwell," he said, his voice firm, unwavering, despite the powerful emotion shining in his eyes. "You gave me the greatest gift imaginable when you gave me Lily, but the gift I want most is the chance to spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of both of you." Sophie's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a sob, as tears streamed freely down her beautiful face, tears of overwhelming joy. "I'm not asking you to marry the man I was," Marcus continued, his voice softer now, pleading. "I'm asking you to marry the man Lily has helped me become, the man who knows that true success is measured in bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, in scraped knees kissed better, and shared moments of pride." He opened the box, revealing a simple but exquisitely elegant diamond ring, sparkling beneath the lights. "Will you marry me, Sophie? Will you let me be not just Lily's father, but your husband? Will you let us be a true family together forever?" The room collectively held its breath as Anna looked from the glittering ring to Marcus's hopeful, vulnerable face, then to his daughter, who was happily clapping her tiny hands, as if instinctively understanding the immense importance of the moment unfolding before her. "Yes," Sophie whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Then louder, clearer. "Yes, 1,000 times yes," when Marcus, a radiant smile on his face, slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a tender, fierce embrace. Lily wobbled over and wrapped her small arms around both their legs, as if instinctively sealing their family, making it complete. Their kiss was interrupted by the sudden flash of cameras and the exuberant cheers of their friends and family. But neither Marcus nor Sophie cared. They had found their way back to each other, not through calculated plans or business deals, but through the pure, undeniable love of their remarkable daughter. And this time, absolutely nothing would tear them apart. Part 9, A Future Forged in Love. Later that evening, after the last of the guests had gone home, and Lily was safely in her crib, peacefully dreaming, Marcus and Sophie sat on the spacious terrace of what would soon be their shared home, planning their vibrant future together, their hands intertwined. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't seen you at the airport that day?" Marcus asked, his arm wrapped around Sophie as they watched the distant London skyline flicker against the night sky. "I think we would have found each other anyway," Sophie replied, snuggling closer to his warmth, her head resting on his shoulder. "Lily wouldn't have let us stay apart forever. She's been determined to have her family together all along." "Smart girl," Marcus said with a soft smile, a genuine warmth in his voice. She gets that from her mother, and her stubbornness from her father, Sophie added, laughing softly when Marcus pretended to look offended. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both reflecting on the challenging yet beautiful journey that had finally led them to this profound moment. The road had not been easy, riddled with misunderstandings and painful silences, and trust had been painstakingly rebuilt. Slowly, one day at a time, one shared laugh, one comforting touch. But they had overcome the suffocating darkness, and against all odds, had found their way back to the light. In her room, Lily slept soundly, surrounded by brightly wrapped birthday gifts and the boundless love of parents who had learned through hard-earned experience that the best things in life truly are worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for. Tomorrow, no doubt, would bring new challenges, new joys, and innumerable new memories to treasure, shaping their collective future. But tonight, the Vane family was beautifully and completely whole. And that, after all, was all that truly mattered. What did you think of the new ending and Marcus's expanded journey? Did the family growth and new purpose resonate with you? Share your feedback below, and if you loved this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more heartwarming tales.